Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Trojan Dash. I'm your host, Sam Arslanian, joined with Nathan Ackerman once again. Nathan, how are you doing?
I'm kind of tired. I got in this morning from Salt Lake City for the USC Trojans Utah Utes football game, of course, that we are going to discuss. I'm back. I'm back home in the Bay Area, California. I don't have my USC wall decal behind me, so I'll have to figure out how to get that back up soon. But I'm doing all right, all things considered.
Yeah, if you missed the game yesterday, and everyone missed part of the game if you weren't there due to a TV outage, the cameras went down. But USC 3-0 in the season, 33-17 in Salt Lake. And this is a game that you kind of circle on the calendar every year, especially when it's in Salt Lake City, right? The home team has won this matchup for the past 12 years, I think it was, maybe 8. I don't know the exact number, but home field
I think it
advantage
was
is
7.
7. Home field
Yeah,
advantage, regardless, is a huge thing for these teams. Salt Lake is a hostile environment, and above all, it was cold. It was 36 degrees there. I'm sure you felt it. I was sitting in Southern California inside watching the game. It was only like 60 degrees out, which is cold for here. I don't want to exaggerate too much, but it was a good game. You circle Arizona State and you circle Utah, especially when you're looking at a conference-only schedule. But really, it didn't look like Utah was the game that we needed to circle at the beginning of the year. I think UCLA is. But we'll get into that a little bit later, where USC stands in the national picture, because this looks really good for USC if you're talking about a Pac-12 championship and if you're talking about a college football playoffs. But we'll get into that at the end of the show. We always talk about the rankings at the end. I want to get into the takeaways from this game. This game, a lot of things that we've been wanting to get fixed, a lot of things that we've been hoping are going to iron out. USC is known to start slow, and they're known to fumble the bag against some teams that that they should be beating a lot, by a lot. So Arizona was one of those games. Arizona State was one of those games. So slow start, playing down to a team's level. There's 2. And then third game, USC figures things out, and they look very competent and very good. So Nathan, I want to start with you. Give me your takeaways from this game.
So I have a few. I thought this was USC's by far best overall performance of the season. I have a few, so I'm just going to list these off. I thought the linebackers looked competent for possibly the first time all year. Kanai Mauga especially. I thought Keenan Christian was good. I don't know why USC doesn't use him at all. I don't know why he's hardly been utilized up to this point in the schedule. I thought Graham Harrell's hand was kind of forced because Stepp and Carr were both out, so we kind of had to use him. And I would have liked to see him get more than 5 attempts, but progress is progress. So I'd like to see him play. That dude can absolutely fly.
I think Sorry, I was going to say, I think it's awesome to put him in there. You spread that out. There's no running back that has the speed like him, maybe in the entire conference, right? So you have him in there, and just he's a threat alone because that safety has to worry about him, right? Because he's going to get past, a corner. He's going to get past the lineman very easily, right?
Yeah.
And that just having him on the field is something that the defense needs to worry about. And I like having him in there, even if you're not passing to him, even if you just have him going out. He's someone that can break some ankles and just with his speed. And I like having him out there for that. I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. Continue.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, this is a team that severely lacks speed, too. For all of its talent, it's not a very fast team. So he definitely adds an element to the offense that they just don't have without him. Brew McCoy looked really good to me. I think he led the team in targets with 8 and yards with 65. I want to say it might have been 66. I thought screenplays he was especially effective at. I want to see them use a lot more of those. And then Eric Cromanhook, especially in the red zone, I think adds a really important weapon for Keaton Slovis to go to. There was 1 or 2 times when there was a slight miscommunication on a route, and it ended up in a Keaton Slovis pick on one of those times. But I think Cromanhook had a touchdown against Arizona late. He had another one against Utah. It seems like he's having a steadily increasing role in this offense. And tight end play was one of those things that wasn't expected to be a big part of the offense this year, which makes sense because the wide receivers are so talented. But I think that if you have him in there, especially in 3rd and 7, 2nd and goal from like the 8 kind of spots, I think it's really effective. And I think the little slant route that they've been trying, I haven't seen it not work. I mean, even the one play where Keaton threw the pick, Cromanhook was open. So that's a play that I like to see them run. I like to see Cromanhook being used there, and I think that he presents a look that defenses aren't quite expecting. because nobody really expects the tight ends to do anything in this offense, which, again, is understandable because it's not like they are the top targets at all or even like one of the top 5. But I think the more we can see them, the better this offense is going to be, and especially with given how much USC has struggled in the red zone, turning opportunities into touchdowns, not just points, but touchdowns. I think that's something that we need to see more of moving forward. I'd like to see that yesterday.
Yeah, you mentioned the slant route. That's something that USC has been kind of known for and really been able to capitalize on. I want to give a shout out. Michael Pittman Jr., first touchdown in the NFL today on a slant route. You like that little segue right there. I want to get to the chat a little bit. We got Ryan Root coming in from Cougar Dash. Congrats on beating a team that played their first game of the season this weekend. We're 3-0, man. That's all I care about. We'll see you later. We'll see what Wazoo can do. They ruined my my season in 2017. We'll see if they can do that again. I'm not too worried about it. Emil, back again. Emil, thank you for tuning in once again.
Man.
D-line killed it. O-line needs a little bit more work. Absolutely agree there. The D-line looked a lot better this game. A lot more pressure on Rising and what's the other guy? Bentley. Thank you. QB needs to relax. I'm going to get to that in a second. I prefer the running back play. Only 2 running backs were in the game. It looked a lot more balanced. Yeah. I mean, when you're out 2 guys, you only have 2 left. I don't know if they're going to put – Is Quincy Jonte even on the team anymore? I think he is, right? I remember we had to go that deep last year because of how many injuries we had.
Yeah. And the very first play, he fumbled. His very first play.
Anyways, I want to get to what Emil was talking about. The O-line did look better. Okay, I think it was fine. The one thing that hurt me a little bit, and we've had some. Keaton has not been playing up to his potential. He's a fantastic quarterback. I love what he can do. We saw what he can do last year. Once this guy gets settled in a little bit more, it looks great. You saw in those first 2 games when the offensive line was all but absent, especially on the right side, right? We've talked about that a lot, that Keaton was able to get out. He didn't take sacks in those games. Sacked very rarely. He is playing. Sweet. Thank you, Emil. He didn't take sacks in those games, right? And he was able to get out. 3 sacks against Utah. He was staying in that pocket a little bit more. And I don't know if that's just because he knew, hey, I have a little bit more time now. This offensive line's handling this defensive line a little bit better than we've seen in weeks past. I'm going to sit in this pocket. I think he's great in the pocket, and he has that awareness. I would just like to see him get out a little bit more than that. I think there's a happy medium between the 2 where the offensive line can give him a pocket to have, and he can also escape it when necessary. But not bad play by Keaton. A couple balls thrown behind him. That one interception was not great. And the fumble was obviously not great too. That's somewhere where I would usually like to see him leave the pocket. That one really collapsed on him, and that ball got punched out. And we've seen him leave the pocket on plays like that. So I'm waiting for that to happen. And I think this next week is going to be a fun week. Colorado, I'm excited for. I think that's going to be a huge game. Thank God it's at the Coliseum because Lord knows what happened in what's their city called? Boulder, thank you.
Boulder.
It's blanking on it. In Boulder last year, I was there, and that was rough. That was probably one of my most vicious columns I've written. Ryan's saying, if it weren't for luck, y'all be 1-2. And Emil's like, I agree with you. Winning ugly is winning. The team will peak by week 5. So week 5, that'll be Washington State. Wazoo. Emil, you are on the dot with your peak when necessary mantra. I love that you're sticking with it. Please keep going. You've been right so far. We'll see. Nathan, other takeaways that you have? Elaborate on.
I want to talk about Keaton Slovis for a bit because I feel like after every USC game this season, whether they win or lose, whether it's convincing or not, I'll talk after the game. All the columnists from the journalists, all the post-game stories, whatever, all the talk shows, whatever. It's all about Keaton Slovis. And it's all saying the same stuff, like something is wrong with Keaton Slovis. And I've seen everything from, his hand hurts to he's not quite there mentally.
I've seen bring back JT Daniels already.
Yeah, I've seen bring back, and JT Daniels played great. JT Daniels played great. I won't even lie. But Keaton Slovis is good. And I think people are speculating a little bit too much. I think that if this is bad quarterback play, USC has a really good problem on its hands. And I think Keaton – regression to the mean in his sophomore season was pretty much unavoidable, right? I mean, what he did his freshman year was absurd. And that was when he was a freshman, unknown 3-star out of high school. And nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew what he brought. Now they've had a year to sort of prepare for him. They know what he's like. teams are just dropping it all day against him. And he hasn't been perfect this year. He's underthrown, overthrown, missed some guys, forced some passes, whatever. But he's also working with an offensive line that has not been great. Even yesterday, it wasn't great. It was better, but it wasn't great. And some pretty unimaginative, I would say, play calling. And he's still, somewhere around 70% completion percentage he's thrown. I think after week 2, it was 3-1 touchdown to picks. I think he threw 2 touchdowns and 1 pick yesterday. So now that'd be 5-2, which, isn't bad. And I think he's been fine. I think he's going to get better. I don't know what's wrong with him. I think there's not as much wrong with him as people want to speculate.
I'm not worried.
Yeah, no, I'm not. And again, I think that if USC is going to fall short this year, it's not going to be because of Kedon Slovis. It's going to be because there are some bigger flaws on this team, and Kedon Slovis has played fine. And this is like pretty much, I think, the only thing people agree upon is that this is pretty much as low as Kedon Slovis will go, and it's not really that low. So I'm not worried about Kedon, and frankly, I don't want to talk about him too much because I don't think he should be the center of every single conversation around USC football.
No, I mean, there's way bigger issues than Kedon. I want to move on to maybe what you would consider some of those issues. The offensive and defensive coordinator, Todd Orlando, Graham Harrell, Sorter. What do you take away after the first 3 weeks? We have Graham Harrell in his second season, Todd Orlando in his first, and Todd Orlando replaced probably one of the worst defensive coordinators you could have. I love him. Don't get me wrong. I love flipping on names
Clancy
today.
Pendergast.
Clancy Pendergast, Jesus. I love Clancy Pendergast. I think he's a great guy. It wasn't working. And then Graham Harrell obviously replacing T. Martin, whose last season when it was in 2018, which was also in dire need of a refreshing. What are your grades? It's coming up on. We're in finals week right now, right? What are your grades?
Yeah. Okay. So after the first 2 weeks, I kind of thought the highest that Todd Orlando could elevate himself in week 3 was a B- because the first 2 weeks were just not good. They looked underprepared against Arizona State. They didn't execute, and they looked completely unprepared against Arizona. They allowed 30 points to a team that frankly should not have scored 30 points on them. They made a pro-style, decent passing quarterback look like a dual threat, which shouldn't have happened. It was just the coverage was blown on pretty much every single play. It was not great. But I think what he did against Utah elevated him to that B- status, if you will. And I think one of the most impressive things for me was that they didn't know what to prepare for. They didn't know if it was going to be Bentley or Cameron Rising. And they're two completely different styles of quarterbacks, right? Rising's more of a dual threat. Bentley's more of a pro-style guy. And Rising came out on the first drive. He looked fine. He made some tough passes. But after that, he really did not look good at all. And then Bentley came in after Rising got hurt on, I think, like the sack and fumble at, within inside of Utah's own 5-yard line. And Bentley didn't look good either. And USC's defensive line was pressuring him all game. Like I said, the linebackers were actually playing well. It just looked like the play calling there was a lot better. They knew what to expect, even though they didn't know what to expect. They looked super prepared for that game. And they only allowed 10 points all game because one of the touchdowns came on the Kedon Slovis scoop and score in the second quarter. And no points in the second half. They were dominant. They were just dominant. And I think that if that's the USC defense that we see for the rest of the year, I mean, the sky's the limit for this team. So I think Orlando did about as well as he possibly could have done. USC's defense was not perfect, but it was up there. Definitely the best performance of the season. So I will say Orlando is at a B- as of now.
I'm going to put him at a B. Just because I like what I'm seeing, and it takes time to install a new scheme, right? It takes time, especially with a coach like Orlando. Dude, the guy is, I've said it 100 times, he's a basket case, and I love it. Like, the dude has more energy than I think I wish I could have that energy during finals week, because I'd have all my finals done already. All my projects would be done. I'm going to give him a B, just because those first 2 games are still bad. I want to see more, but this last game was really promising. And yeah, it's against an offense which is basically completely rebuilt, especially if you're losing a great quarterback and a fantastic running back, right? So that's why I wasn't super worried about this game. There were just so many question marks, and I feel like USC had the edge on that. I want to see a little bit better tackling from the defense, specifically still the Isaiah Palamau, really. I would like to see some better tackling. Even Greg and OG, I feel like could tackle a little bit better. It wasn't atrocious at all. It was fine. But there were some tackles that just took like 10 yards to bring a guy down. I'm like, got to get him down a little bit sooner than that. Drake Jackson, though, love him. Dude is awesome. He's playing really well. He's a highlight of this defense. Talanoa is doing pretty good too. I want to move on to Harrell now. I'm going to give Harrell the same grade of B, and kind of in the inverse. I want to see them torch some people. I want to see. Look, I understand this air raid is going to be figured out. You've seen it in the first 2 weeks, a little bit less so against Utah, where you see that drop 8 coverage in the rush 3. The good thing was Keaton didn't have as much pressure this game, right? So they were able to kind of sit back there and figure out that drop 8 and have a little bit more time there. But when your offensive line is letting 3 guys come through like that, and Keaton's under that pressure and no one's open because 8 guys are back there, then we got an issue, right? So I want to see that. Bring in the running game. I like the tight end usage. I love the tight end usage, especially for a team that you don't normally see throwing to their tight end. I haven't remember. I think Eric Kromenhoek may have more targets in this past game than he did ever at USC. Like I don't remember him at all in the past 2 seasons. I think maybe 1 or 2 catches. But everyone in the press box would be like, "Oh my God, they threw to a tight end," right? So I want the tight end usage. I want more running back usage out of Graham Harrell. But right now, I'm going to put him in a B. I think these next couple of games are really going to tell where Harrell and Orlando are as coaches.
Yeah, I'm going to give Harrell slightly lower. I'm going to give him a C+. And the reason for me is that I feel like USC, from an offensive standpoint, has approached these first 3 games with it almost seems like they're making an excuse in advance that they don't know what kind of coverage they're going to see. The first and the third games when they were playing Arizona State and Utah, they were doing the whole, "Oh, we haven't seen this team play this year. We don't know what they're going to bring." And then against Arizona, they said the same thing. Plus, it's an overhauled coaching staff. We don't know what they're going to bring. It's drop 8. It's literally just drop 8. Like every single time. That's why BYU beat SC last year. It's drop 8.
Ooh, that was
pretty much every single play. When they play man, USC beats them. Like it happened on the Tyler Vaughn's touchdown because these wide receivers are just better than everybody else. Like I'm sorry, they're just better than everybody else. And when they run man, USC's fine. They're going to need to figure out how to beat the drop 8. It's taken, even if they started to do that yesterday, it's taken a little bit too long for them to get that down. I still want to see more of a balanced attack between the run and the pass. I thought yesterday, I think it was a 35-20, 31 split technically, but 5 of them were Keaton scrambles, which means that those are technically pass plays. So it was really more like 40-20. Something like that. And I get that Step and Carr were both out, so there's not much you can do with the running game there. But I still would have liked to see a little bit more of that. But I think it was a step in the right direction. I think Arizona State, they were passing at like 65%.
But you also had those screens. There were a lot of screen usage, right?
Yeah.
Which
there were a lot of screens,
I would just take that as like this is more of a running play, right? Obviously it's not, but you have that same kind of flexibility there. Where you can get those short yards, and I like that. I don't think you need to go deep on every play.
No. Yeah, and I've liked the screens. I've liked the check downs. I like the little flat routes that they run. I just think we need to see more of the running game specifically, like hand the ball off. I'm loving the draws that they've done. I think Keenan Christian had like a 47-yard run on a draw, because once you get Keenan Christian in the open field, he can beat pretty much anybody because he flies, like I said. So I'd like to see. I liked seeing that last night. But again, I need to see them figure out the drop 8 more. I need to see them do it more consistently and effectively throughout the game. They scored 9 points in the second half yesterday. They got in the red zone a few times, never turned it into a touchdown in the second half. And I get that, from pretty much the start of the fourth quarter on, they were just trying to drain clock, which is fine. But even though it didn't happen in the second half, they went to the red zone 6 times. They scored 5 of them, even if only one or 2 of them were touchdowns. So that was good to see. Definitely an improvement this week from Graham Harrell and the USC offense. I still think that the rhythm is not quite there. I think it can get there. They just need to figure out the drop 8. The offensive line, especially the right side, as we've talked about, made big steps, and it all really comes from there. But I just need to see more creativity. I saw a little bit of that last night, and I need that trend.
Yeah, you know what I'm worried about most? I've said this multiple times. I'm worried about UCLA. I'm worried about how this defense can contain not only a running quarterback, a dual threat quarterback like DTR, right? And this team proved that they can play even if they don't have DTR in there. If you watch that Oregon game yesterday, that looked like a fantastic team out there going up against the Ducks. But you also have Demetric Felton, and that guy can run, and that guy is hard to bring down. And I think this defense is going to need to figure some things out before they see Felton and DTR, because if this looks anything like it did against Arizona State, they are in it for a world of hurt. I am worried about that. But I want to move on to our final topic because I know we're going to talk a bit about this one. Where does USC stand in the national picture? The Trojans moved up to 19 in the AP Top 25 poll. They got Colorado next week, Wazoo, and UCLA, and probably Oregon at the end of the season, right? We're closing in on the end of the season. It's a short season. Nathan, I know you're not happy about this ranking in terms of the national picture, but what I will say is you only have a couple more days to wait until Tuesday when the CFP rankings come out. And those are the only things that matter, right? AP doesn't decide who's in the championship. That is the CFP. So Nathan, I'll let you rant about this number 19 spot and what you think needs to happen.
So do I think they should have been ranked number 19? No. Am I that mad about it? No, because 18 maybe. I think they should have hopped Coastal Carolina, which had kind of a rough win over Appalachian State. But again, they're 8-0, 7-0, something like that. So I can't be too mad about that. Maybe they should have hopped Marshall, same sort of situation there. They're undefeated, haven't really played anybody that stands out. So whatever. But again, I'm not really too concerned about the number 19 spot. I think when the rankings come out on Tuesday, what they're going to do is if they aren't going to do it like this, but if they were going to say we're just going to rank the teams in order of the chances that they have to make the college football playoff, I think USC should be somewhere around 6-7, right? Because you have Notre Dame, Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, definitely ahead of them, and then maybe Cincinnati and maybe BYU that's probably pretty much it. Whoever's undefeated out of the Big Ten, whether that's Northwestern or probably going to be Ohio State, because Ohio State's phenomenal. Alabama, we were saying if Notre Dame beats Clemson, that really opens up a spot for SC, and I think an undefeated USC beats an undefeated Cincinnati. Given the strength of schedule, especially if USC does that convincingly. Namely, they don't have 4-point wins over the Arizonas of the Pac-12, but they come out, they really give it to Colorado. Same with Washington State, and they take care of UCLA before putting up a respectable performance against Oregon. I think that the toughest thing left for USC to make the playoff is going to be them winning out. Obviously, right? Because I think Notre Dame definitely has a chance to beat Clemson. There's a good chance that a spot's open, but of course, if USC loses one game or they're not convincing enough, that spot's probably going to be gone. So, again, I think they should not be ranked in the top 10. Of course, they haven't looked good enough to do that. But if we're going purely off of who has the highest chance to make the playoff, probably 6 or 7 range for me. And I think there's still a real shot for USC to get that done.
Yeah. Emil goes, that's too high for now, Nathan. I think 15 to 18 rankings about right. Top 15, not. It will come.
Yeah.
So, I think we both agree with that.
For the ranking, for sure. The ranking, for sure. They should,
Let me play through hypotheticals. I love hypotheticals, especially around rankings and college football. Looking at the College Football Power Index right now, okay? They rank a bunch of things, projected win-loss record, win-out percentage, yada, 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 okay? Percentage to make the playoffs, okay? Let's take out the top 3, which are absolutely in there, right? So you got Alabama, they got a 94.2% chance, Ohio State, 71.1%, and Notre Dame, 59.3%, okay? And then you have, surprisingly, you have 35.2 is Cincinnati, okay? And then Clemson. Then the Oregon Ducks at 26.9, and then USC at 14.8, okay? So here's what I'm looking at. If USC can win out, and let's see, where is Oregon ranked? Right now they're at 9, okay? I don't know what's going to happen with CFP, but if you can beat an Oregon team at the end of the season like that, you're looking at these rankings, and it's more like Oregon's expected to win out and beat USC, right? Which is a good win for them and definitely gives them a chance. But if USC can flip that on its head, I think USC has a really good shot, especially like we were talking about. If Notre Dame can put a second win over Clemson, I don't think Clemson's going to take it in. I don't know how you put a 2-loss team over there. Granted, they're 2 losses to a fantastic team in Notre Dame, right? Clemson's a great team. But how do you put a 2-loss team over an undefeated 7-0 USC team with wins against an Arizona State who was almost ranked when they play, and granted, they're not going to have many games for a while because of COVID, A win over a solid solid Utah team, a win over a probably good Colorado team is what we've been seeing, and a solid UCLA team who put up a battle against Oregon, right? And then a win over Oregon. You have to win out, right? You have to win out. We know that. That's the only way you're going to get here if you're a Pac-12 team. There's absolutely no other way. I think Oregon has a shot, too. I think they have a very good shot, but I think all of that comes down to Clemson losing against Notre Dame. If Clemson wins, you got two one-loss teams in there in Notre Dame and Clemson, and you got like, okay, well, they lost to each other. That's a perfect storyline for this college football playoffs. So, I mean, I think the CFP is locked up unless Notre Dame can beat Clemson. I don't see any other way it's going to happen.
Do you think there's a chance if Clemson destroys Notre Dame? Let's say they win by like 35 points. No. You don't think so?
I think Notre Dame.
I don't think so either. But yeah, but it's all about how you do at the end of the season, right? And if USC,
you got to finish strong.
If USC can destroy Oregon, beat them by 20 points, something like that, I don't think that'll happen. I don't even know if they're going to win. I don't even know if they're going to get there. This is all hypothetical, like you said. But assuming that they do, because that's the only way we can talk about the college football playoff. Yeah, I think there's a chance. I think, like you said, Notre Dame's probably going to have to beat Clemson. I don't see Alabama, Ohio State losing because they're just dominant. They don't really have that tough of competition left. I think Alabama will play Florida probably in the SEC championship, but they should take care of that. Yeah, USC has a chance to get it done. I think, like you said,
if Florida wins that SEC championship, USC's not in.
Not in?
No. I think Alabama will absolutely be up there. A one-loss Alabama.
You think Alabama would still be in?
I think Florida. I think Florida takes that last spot.
They would both be in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I do.
I don't know.
I don't see them doing anything else. They want. You're telling me Alabama, one-loss Alabama is not going to be in this college football playoffs? A one-loss to a sixth-ranked Florida? Come on, Nathan. Come on.
Oh, okay, but the difference between that and Notre Dame is that Alabama didn't beat Florida earlier, did they? I don't think so.
I don't believe so.
The Notre Dame Clemson thing, they kind of cancel each other out and you put them both in, right? But if Alabama comes in, they only have one game against Florida, they lose it, even if they lose it by multiple possessions. And you have an undefeated SC team that's playing well toward the end. I don't think that USC team would be a better team than Alabama, but they might have a better resume.
Nathan, I don't see it. I think everyone up there has to win out. I think you need all the I don't think you're going to have, unless those teams, those top like 6 teams, right? Unless they have a loss to each other, I don't think you're going to have a one-loss team. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Jason's in the chat from Buffalo Dash. Thoughts on the Colorado game? My thoughts are it's going to be a big game for USC. Okay. I think USC has the edge. I don't expect USC to lose it, especially if we see what they could do if they keep going up on that trajectory that they are, and we can see what they did against Utah, utilize that run game more, and really go up against a Colorado team that they are better than. Colorado looks great this year. They look a lot better than they did last year. And they struggled against them last year. But a lot of that was defense. And if that defense can figure things out and really do a better job than it did last year, I think it's a lock.
Yeah, I think Colorado's respectable. I think they're a lot better than I thought that they would be. But I think Stanford is pretty bad. And Colorado won that game by 3 points. So, and then again, they were canceled this weekend. You're going to have Colorado coming into that game after 2 weeks of not playing. We've seen early on this year what rust can do to a team. We saw USC struggle in its first game. We saw Arizona State didn't even play a super clean game in that game. Utah obviously struggled in its first game. So, I mean, this isn't their first game, of course, but they're going to be 2 weeks off. So, I don't know. USC really, I think, has control of this game. They should have control of this game, and they should be able to win it by multiple possessions. I need to see more from Colorado. Honestly, they could come out of the gate, start strong. I don't know. You never really know if they have looked good this year. They look a lot better than I thought. Yeah, they are.
COVID
sure.
bye week.
But I think that hurts more than it helps, to be totally honest.
I think so too.
So yeah, I think SC is going to be riding all the momentum into this game. They're going to be riding the hot hand, whatever. And I think they get it done. I'm not terribly. I'm like you. I'm way more concerned about the UCLA game.
Yeah. All right, we're running out of time here. I want to address one last chat from Emil. He said, "Don't rule out Georgia." I don't see a 2-loss team getting in there, and that's where Georgia is right now. I don't see a path for Georgia really. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not going to rule them out because obviously they are still Georgia, but a 2-loss team going up against a bunch of undefeated teams potentially, I don't see it yet. But that's going to wrap up our show today. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Trojan Dash on the Dash Sports TV network. We're here every Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you tune in for more news and discussion on your USC Trojans. As always, we publish columns exclusively on Sports Pac-12. You can go read Nathan's work over there at sportspac12.com or follow them on Twitter at sportspac12. And make sure you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, at Dash Sports TV, and visit our website, dashsports.tv, on the web to catch all the clips and best episodes from Dash Sports TV. No matter what fan you are of the Pac-12, we have a show for you. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week after the Colorado game.